Hi Lee, so what's your reflections on the Reading defeat now after a few days?
I was disappointed, of course, with the result, because the result is the be-all and end-all. But I thought we made them look very, very average with our quality build-up. I thought we nullified the game well and silenced the home crowd in the first 15 minutes. We took the punch on the nose, and then we upped our game a little bit and responded really well twice. And we're creating a lot of chances. We get a lot of shots off on goal, which is good. And for whatever reason, the goalkeepers in the last two games in particular are getting man of the match performances. And that's probably a bit of a counterbalance between, can our finishing be better? Yes. And obviously goalkeepers playing very well. So we talk about expected goals and quality of chances, and there are statistics to show that we're performing well, and we need a bit of luck. I think we've hit the post 10 times so far this season. I think that our expected goals are in the top sort of 6 or 7, which is good, and I believe truly that if you continue along that path with a new team, don't forget, new team, 8 new players pretty much playing in that team, evolving all the time, we'll continue to improve, and of course we'll get the results that we want to go on another run of like 4 or 5 wins on the spin.
I was going to ask about the statistics out there, but do you feel that maybe City haven't had the results they quite deserve so far this season? I
think there's probably a lot of people in the division that will say that. I mean, you're really conscious. You've got to be a master of language now. Do you know what I mean? Because as a manager or a head coach, because you're really conscious not to make anything sound like excuses. And a season over 46 games inevitably will even itself out. But I do feel like we've just had a little run of either not taking our chances where we should have done or could have done. Couple of refereeing decisions, i.e. the Sheffield Wednesday one, the penalty against Reading, that's a definite pen. And don't forget, we get feedback from the referees in the MOAS structure where they report back, and obviously they at that point admit whether they've made a mistake or not, in which they've made 3 mistakes at key points in the last 3 games. Matty Taylor's goal onside at Brentford, Sheffield Wednesday offside, first goal very important, and then penalty that could have put us 2-1 into the lead against Reading. So yes, there was a lot of football to play, but that coincided with the chances, I think, has shown that we're very, very competitive in the division, and in my eyes it's only a matter of time before we start putting a decent run together.
So just to clarify, the referees have actually said that they might have made some wrong decisions?
Yeah, so the process is that they're called key match decisions. So you give you a report, so you will give a scoring for the referees and the assistant referees, and then they will ask you for key match decisions, and obviously if there's a goal or a penalty, that will be assessed. We'll have to provide video footage. The assessor will write a report to what he saw on the day, and then obviously the video footage will be studied. Now we do that for a number of reasons. One is because we believe it's a very difficult job for the referees to be able to do you know what I mean, live up to the speed, particularly without the VAR type stuff coming into this game yet. So we try and help educate. They've got a full-time sector now in the Championship, and they're often having sort of case studies and conferences around certain decisions. So we like to help with that and provide for that. Then they do have a Justice League, what sort of goes out secretly, if you like, so you can see, I mean, whether you've been on the wrong end, because you can also be on the right end of bad decisions. Do you know what I mean? And we can all moan about the bad ones, but it might be that we've had 3 bad ones and 3 good ones in our favour, and that hopefully is the bit that evens itself out over the season. And obviously the other thing is to make sure we coach correctly, because if the rule changes, i.e. the Sheffield Wednesday game, my point to the referees was, well, what do you want me to coach my centre halves then? Because we work on squeezing up and following the lines of the ball. But if you're telling me if the striker stays offside and he puts in behind us, then he scores like he did, then I can't tell my defenders to squeeze up, and I should be telling my strikers to be lazy and not get back on side as quickly as possible, because they're part of the process in us clearing the ball behind their line and going through and scoring. Do you know what I mean? So, like, the important part is for my players and that total understanding of the phases, the second phases, and that was my point for the Sheffield Wednesday goal. And there was a huge debate about that one. We looked at loads of different angles. We had the monitoring and the words that were said via the referee's intercom, and obviously we was right, and it was a poor decision on the day.
And where do you sit in the Justice League at the moment? Where is the club?
Well, they don't publish that until the end of the season. So normally it's like almost like challenges, like you get in tennis. You know what I mean? Which challenges were correct and which weren't, and often we don't challenge unless we know, really, because there's no point. You know what I mean? We're there to help. We're not there to frustrate. But Webby's was a good example on Saturday. Wins a header, directs it towards goal, gets a karate kick in the jugular, and it's a foul, isn't it? Anywhere on the pitch, and didn't get it, and that's the type of thing that obviously, if it goes for you, and suddenly you're 2-1 up in a game, controlling it. So I text the players after the game with those statistics, saying, look, do you know what I mean? Keep believing, keep the faith, because you're not a million miles away.
How's Jack Hunt? Because he came off early, didn't he, in the game?
Yeah, Jack Hunt in training sustained an injury before the Reading game. I think it was the Wednesday session, and what he's done is he's I think it's from his 7th rib or 6th rib. He's pulled the muscle away from the bone a little bit, so the fibres obviously come apart. So what happened was he was all right, and then he had a slide tackle or last ditch, stretched a little bit or overstretched and felt it. So it was a case of, look, we're going for the game. We didn't need anybody that wasn't 100% on the pitch. You know what I mean? We may as well go a little bit gung-ho here. But he's all right. We give him a couple of days off to let it heal and let the healing process fully take into account. Dosed him up with some anti-inflammatories and the stuff that he needs. And he trained today, no problem.
Great stuff. Any chance that Haki Bedelican or Frank Fielding or Bailey White could be involved at the weekend, or is it? Not
Hakib, yes, he is a possibility for sure. He's probably not lung capacity wise in the perfect place, but obviously as an impact player potentially, he could definitely have 15 minutes, for example, and potentially affect the game. Bailey Wright, no, still hasn't trained yet with the squad, and Frankie Fielding is slowly but very, very slowly recovering. So at the moment, neither Bailey or Frankie are in our thoughts.
Korey Smith obviously signed a new deal this week. That's great news for the club, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant, and it's often a really awkward situation, and I think credit should go to the board and Mark Ashton for that one, because they've done the right thing. So you've got an injured player, but you've got an injured player that's put his body on the line for the football club and has created some great moments for this football club. And I think, what message are we sending out if we don't give Korey his extension? Do you know what I mean? Obviously he's got a value because he's a big player for our squad. And I think it settles him, settles his family, and hopefully when he gets back fit and flying, he'll have that in the pit of his stomach, wanting to really do well like he's always done for the football club, and know that the club have done the right thing by him.
And that follows on from Marlon Pack and Jamie Patterson in the summer. Just on Korey, I think he's renewed until 2020, but he's only actually next season to the end of. I think you said before, Lee, that quite often the club throws in a 1-year option on the club side. Could that be the case here?
No, I don't think that's the case on this one. I think really the way to look at that deal is Korey sustained a bad injury, right? So what we're doing with that is we're saying, right, there's an extension, because A, we believe in you, and B, we really respect you. So at that point, Korey can go and earn himself a new contract, no problem. But what it does, it gives him and his family a financial security. Do you know what I mean? It enables him to not have to chase the injury, because, you know what I mean, a player might be thinking about his future going into the last 6 months of his contract, when he'll be back, which will be January. And we need to make the right decisions for his long-term health and also Bristol City's long-term future. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, by signing Korey, we're saying that we see a part of that, but it doesn't mean that 10 days into his return that he won't get a new contract, for example, and we might extend that. And obviously Korey will have that in his mind as well. Therefore, it gives him that bit between the teeth if he wants to stay, or indeed if he wants to play himself away, but hopefully he wants to stay, to go and fight, but knowing that the club have looked after him in a way that they didn't have to.
Sure, and good news. And also, I guess, does that mean that Matty Taylor and Callum O'Dowda are next on the menu, maybe, to hopefully the club renew those guys as well?
Well, Matty Taylor's got an option, hasn't he? So obviously I wouldn't talk out of turn on that one, but of course the discussions go on. And Callum O'Dowda, we've been discussing for a while the option of a new contract, and that's something for me that I'd like to get nailed down as quickly as possible, because I think Callum's got huge potential, and I'm probably the biggest believer of Callum's potential, but I don't think he's hit the heights yet this season that he has. Probably his best spell for us, and where you really thought he's lighting up now, was the 5 or 6 games before his injury last season. Now, he's a great lad, Cal. Do you know what I mean? And if there's anybody that you're willing to do well, it's him, because of his attitude and the way he trains. So we work with Cal every day, and obviously the thing for him is to make sure he gets back in the team. He's actually ill today, so we'll have to give him a text, see how he is, but he hasn't been feeling very well. And then hold the place, and it's tough because they've got a lot of competition. Sometimes it can be a difficult thing to have too many players, and we've had a big run of injuries, but now they're coming back, and which is great. But it's not always easy to keep everybody sweet and happy.
Yeah, he scored that great goal against Cardiff, didn't he, here last season, just before then. So Preston up next, and City are due a win, aren't they, against...
Cool. Talk about bogey team. Preston are absolute, but they're a good side. Do you know what I mean? I think they're 6 unbeaten. Really like their midfield. Obviously, I had Ben Pearson before. Very, very good player. Quick, technically good. And it'll be a challenge for our midfield, because I think they're up there, depending on whether they play Gallagher, Johnson and Brown, in one of the best midfield. So maybe they'll be a bit disappointed sort of with their points returned so far, given the quality of their squad. And but it shows that you get your best players fit. You know what I mean, like they've had probably in the last 6 games, that they've gone 6 unbeaten, 2 wins and 4 draws.
For City at the moment, it's just 1 game a week, obviously, without a Carabao Cup run this season. I was wondering, has that given you a chance to maybe get out and scout a few more players like you did? I think you went to Portugal, didn't you?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, listen, we've always got our eye on the future. So I mean, what we can bring in, whether that's in terms of trade or development. But it also gives me a chance to see the players that are already in the building but out on loan. Like Tuesday last week, for example, I went to Torquay versus Weston-super-Mare, where there was 4 players on the pitch that were Bristol City young players, which was great and all done very, very well. And I enjoy that. It's important that I think the players know that the manager's keeping tabs on them, because you can easily just be sort of out of sight, out of mind. And obviously between Brian and myself, it's important that we make those young players believe, because there is a pathway if they're good enough to get into our first team.
Just finally, Bristol City released their financial accounts last week, and I think does not go to show, I don't know if you've seen them yourself, but how tough it is in the Championship competing against sides with the Premier League parachute payments, but also the support of the Lansdowne family continually behind this club.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, personally, I've got massive respect for that. I think it shows that the division is a really tough one to compete. It is expensive, and I also think that the assets created we have to respect are really important. Obviously, you'd expect next year's results to look a lot different due to the sales of players, and that's a good thing for the football club. We know we're trying to move towards sustainability, and to be honest, we're not a million miles off now with what we've got potentially coming through. And even if players aren't good enough to play for Bristol City first team, you could potentially have 20-30 players playing league football, do you know what I mean, over the next 5 years that have come through the Bristol City Academy that you've got a slice of if they ever sort of hook on to the top sort of level. So I think there's a lot of work going on like that as well behind the scenes. And I think that, listen, does people care about that? Probably not, but they care about results. But it's also very important because of the way that we're trying to go and them objectives, obviously, that are set by the top. Okay.
Just quickly, a couple of questions about Preston. I just wanted to know, why are they such a bogey team for Bristol City? What makes them so hard to beat?
Well, I suppose, listen, as far as I'm concerned, this is a new day and a new game. Do you know what I mean? So you don't go into the game thinking, wow, this is our bogey side. You go into the game evaluating the opposition's strengths and weaknesses and doing your best to impose your strengths on their weaknesses and nullify their threats. So, but I do think they've got quality. I think they recruit well. Do you know what I mean? They recruit English, pretty much, players, or when I say English, I mean British players that are capable of playing in the Championship. They know their market, and obviously they've done well. I mean, last year I think, did they finish 7th or 8th? Do you know what I mean? So lost Hugo, which is probably a big loss for them, and any team that loses key players, of course, is going to take time to adjust, and that's why it's an important game, because do you know what I mean, for us to push points between us and them at this stage, being a good side that they are, would be very big.
Yeah, and I mean, City are currently 12th at the moment, but so close to the playoffs, and a win would push you even closer, wouldn't it? It's so tight at the moment.
Well, that's why I think the frustration comes from that last game Saturday, you know, because like I think that where we are, if we'd have won that game, is about right, like for what we're doing. Do you know what I mean? Or even got a point. So the frustration was that we felt we was the better side and we lost. And again, my message to the players is keep the faith, keep the belief, because a lot of elements to our play have been very, very good. And it's adjustment from last year and an improvement, by the way. Yes, the dynamics change because the personnel changes, but we've got different strengths this year than we had last year, and we want to evolve. We want to be able to be a little bit more direct at times, and I think it's a catch-22 because we've got such quality at the back. Do you know what I mean? That you don't want to be asking quality players to effectively potentially give the ball away, but what we do need is to create more box action. And last year we could do it with a long throw, couldn't we? We got the Magnuson clap, you're slinging Flinty up, and even if you're not playing very well and having a stinker, because you got a box entry and probably the second phase to that box entry, it appears like you're putting pressure on the opposition. But our chances have been a lot purer this year. Our challenge, and whether it be a striker, midfielder or defender, is to make sure that we're a little bit cleaner in our finishing.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Thank you.